Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gurunana Vasya Bande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Bande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Bande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Bande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Kirtana Vaditra Madhyam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Taranga Bhajo Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringara Tanma Diramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatapi Bande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasadam Satana Truptan Hari Bhakta Shangam Kridvaiva Trupte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Dabayara Param Madhurya Lila Gunarupanam Shiradikama Param Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Bande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Nekunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Bheri Jukti Apekshaniya Jono Ratikeli Siddhai Tatrati Daksha Atibalavasya Vande Gurashi Charana Ravindam सच्चाधरिद्वेन समस्तशास्त्रे रुक्तास्तथाव व्यतैव सर्वे किन्तु प्रवर्ज प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् यस्य प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसाद न गति कुतपि यस्य प्रसाद यस्य प्रसाद ध्यायां स्तुवां तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् ध्यायां स्तुवां तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरुश्री नाम ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमस्ते देवे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंद श्री चैतन्य नित्यानंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंद श्री नित्यानंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Nama, Krishna Jadavaye Nama, Jadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Nama, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Vataraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Subhadrama, Netai Gaur Haribo, 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 Netai Gaur Haribo, 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 Netai Gaur Brahmananda. Jai Vishpar Paramansa Prabhaja Kahashari Sutara Sarasi Shumar. Itivange Sabhotanam Bhaktivedanta Samvaraj. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Islam Pratishta Viti Samstapakachar Vaishnav Saramani Patita Pavana. Srila Prabhupada ji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Bhaktodhar ki jai. Shri Upasanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Guru Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ji ki jai. Ananta Kuj Vaishnavi ki jai. Prem se Guru Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavind ki jai. Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. Jai Pramanama Sankirtane Kajanaka Prima Purushottama Shri Sachinanda Nishman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mavrana Avatar ki jai. Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga ki jai. Yoga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Brihapnidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopakut Narada Kunsamakun Giriraj Godhan ki jai. Shri Vrajabhum Vrindavan Mathurudam ki jai. Eloshmi Shri Radha Nila Madhava ki jai. Krishna Maya Purnamadvip Eka Chakradam ki jai. Parama Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Shri Purushottam Ketra Jagannath Puridam ki jai. Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Srimati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan ki jai. Ram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman ji ki jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Kanishingare Bhagavan ki jai. Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Mathura Dharani ki jai. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi ki jai. Nitai Gaurari Pramanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
All glory to the Son of the bodies.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to the Son of the bodies.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to the Son of the bodies. All glories, all glories. All glory to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gaura.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlad Lad Daine. Hiranyakashi Purvasaha. Shilatanka Nakalaye. Ito Narsinga Parato Narsinga. Yato yato yami tato Narsinga. Bhai Narsinga Hirday Narsinga. Narasingamadim Sharanam Prapade. Tav kar kaval vare nakham अद्भुत श्रृंगार दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृंगा केशवधीर्ता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तब कर जय जगदीश रे जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 बोल नरसिंह भगवान की जय भक्त प्रहलाद की जय गुरुदेव महाराज की जय विष्णु भक्ति पत देवी सत्यवती नमो
विष्णु भक्ति प्राण
वृंदाय पति देवाय विष्णु भक्ति पति देवी सत्यवती
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय सभा सत्या विष्णु भक्ति प्राण Can you sing Tulsi?
Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah Namo Namah Vajradha Krishna Seva Pavo Jai Abhilasi शरण लो, तारा वांछा पूर्ण हो। कृपा कोरे करो तारे वृंदावन वासी। और ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वा। नयने रिबो सदा युगल रूप राशि। ये निवेदन धरो सखीर अनुगत करो, सेवा अधिकार दिए करो निज दासी। दीन कृष्ण दासे को ये न मोर होय। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदायन बासी। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदायन बासी। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि प्रमत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani. वृंदाये तुलसी देव्यै प्रियायै केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवते नमो नमः। वृंदाये तुलसी देव्यै प्रियायै केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवते नमो नमः। वृंदाये तुलसी देव्यै प्रियायै केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवते नमो नमः। वृंदे देवी तुलसी महारानी की।
Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes short of you as wishes fulfilled, stay myself on him, make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me residence, pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. That's within my vision. I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower, carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Gopi. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanam Ajanam Bhagni Nivapam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Patipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nisa Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpitani Amitashmarane Nakala Etadrushi Taba Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaiva Midrishamya Janena Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnana Amani Namanadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Jagati Shakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahitu Kitvai Ai Nandatanaja Kinkaram Paritamam Visame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Bhadanam Gadu Gadarudaya Gira Pulakai Chitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahani Bhavishyati Juga Itam Nimishena Chakusha Pravrusa Itam Shunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Viraye Name Asli Shabhapadaratam Pinashtumam Adarshanar Marmahatam Karotuva Jatata Thava Vidadatu Lampato Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratveshe Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays that the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully test the nectar for which always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are no hard for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower and strong and straight, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotion and service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or rather have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and it should remain so. Even if handled me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Jai Shri Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. Mama Varanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord. 2.
Consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to
or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic
literature and pursuance of the Vedic version.
5.
And
Consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often revered as fruitive activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10.
To not
have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai. Namo Inspirakshtabhastai Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavani Paskatyastan. Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai. 1 second. Dhananjaya, can you put that on the screen? What? Up here. Om Aganya Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapritam Yena Bhutali Swayam Ruka Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jitaha Pachikamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Disatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shivarsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjwala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasidanta Tvantaharine Namo Gorakishoraya Shakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gorashakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Goravir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanshakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhudanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guritsuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastyali Bihi Sevyamanam Smarami Shiman Rasurasarambi Vamsivatas Dasta Gasan Venuswanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Tama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistara Bhutali Sumate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Dasatane Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakadasat Masukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabhira Vipadayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Dalaya Taksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamaya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Chibanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Anyani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasim Yavichintya Tatve Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim Kotyatri Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Sampurya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha Suktaryameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Pratibhavitabhis Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasat Akilatma Bhuto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksade Hidayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundari Machintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amena Tistan Nana Vatara Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Gotishvasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesha Bhutam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Jaigun Tad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Pratifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Golokanamni Nichadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Sutesu Tesu Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitascha Yena Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bradami Shristi Stati Pralaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichanurupam api asya chestate sa Govindam Adipurusham tamaham bhajami Shriram yata vidana pritesa yoga sanjayate nahitata pritakasti hetu Yasambutam apitata samupaiti karyat Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Departured eva hitasantaram abhyupetya Dipayate vivita hetu sadar dharma Yastadrikeva hicha Vishnu taya vibhati Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Yakarna narna vajale bhajati sma yoga Nidram mananta jagadanda saruma kupaha Adhara shaktim avalambya param swamurtim Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Yasyaika nisvasita kalamatavalamya Jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanataha Vishnu mahansahi yasya kalavishesu Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Pasman yatasma sakalesu nijesu teja Sriyam kiyat prakatayat apitat vadatra Brahmaya esa jagadanda vidanu karta Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Yat pada pala viyugam vinidaya kumbha Twande pranama samaye saganadi raja Vignan vihantam alamasya jagatrayasya Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Agnir mahiga ganamambu marudisascha Kalastatatma manasitti jagatrayani Yasmad bhavanti vibhavanti visanti yamcha Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami yaschaksuresa savita sakalagrahanam raja samasta suramurti rasesa teja yasya gaya brahmati sambrita kala chakro govindam adipurisham tamaham bhajami dharmota papa nichayasrutayasta pamsi Brahma adikita patagavatayascha jivaha yadata matra vibhava prakata prabhava Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavendra Mahoswakarma Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdahati Kinchu Pajati Bhajam Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Biti Vatsalya Moha Guragora Vasevya Bhavahai Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govindam Adipurisham tamaham bhajami Shriyakanta Kanta Paramapurusha Kalpataravo Chuma Bhumis Chintamani Ganamayi Toyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitad Aswatyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bihi Sravati Sirabhibhyascha Sumahan Nimesar Dakyuva Vrajati Nahi Yatrapi Samaya Bhaje Sveta Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golakam Itiyam Vedantas Te Santaksiti Viralakchara Pratipaye Ishwara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Nadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Shrimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 Chapter 10 Verse number 7 Abhasascha nirodhascha yatosti adiyavasite sa ashraya param brahma paramatmiti sabhyate Abhasa, the cosmic manifestation. Cha, and Nirodha, and its winding up. Cha, also. yata, from the source, asti, is, adyavasiyate, become manifested, saha, he, ashraya, reservoir, param, the supreme, Brahma, being, Paramatma, the supersoul, iti, thus, sabdyate, called. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being, or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. Okay, so that means, basically it means Krishna is the source of creation, maintenance, and destruction or dissipation of the material world. And he is the supreme fountainhead, meaning the source of all the energies and everything, and the absolute truth. There's no truth superior to him. Okay, so purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Synonyms, that means words that have the same meaning, right? Synonyms for the supreme source of all energies, as explained in the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, are Janmadyasya yata, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam, Brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabdyate. This is called Param Brahma, or Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So, in other words, he's equating the words that mean the same thing. So Krishna is the source of the cosmic, he says here, the source of all energies. That means that Krishna and all the scientific knowledge about him is the unified field theory, what Einstein was looking for and what they're still looking for today. And they will not find it, because the unified field theory has to include all the energies in the material world and all the energies in the spiritual world. They don't even understand the energies in the material world. That's why they can't find the equations for the unified field theory. Of course, people don't realize the significance of what this statement is saying. This is something that the greatest minds in the world, from Newton to Einstein to all the modern physicists and mathematicians today, are striving to do, and they can't do it because they don't understand that there are more energies than the material world. We ourselves, as jivas, are energies of Krishna. So it seems a little confusing. One would say, well, no, I mean, we're living entities. No, but living entities an energy of the Lord, just as the material nature is energy of the Lord, just as the entire material spiritual world is energy of the Lord. So all these energies are contained in Krishna himself, and he expands them at his will. So Krishna is the unified field theory, because he encompasses all these different energies and controls them. Because the scientists today are atheists, their knowledge will always be incomplete, and they will always fail to understand what is the reality of the material and spiritual world. That's why modern science is actually dummies fishing around randomly in the ocean of knowledge, and they'll never really figure it out unless they come to Krishna. So now all these synonyms for Krishna are: one, the supreme source of all energies, And two, this is explained in the beginning, right in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it says, Janma Dasyayata. That's the first three words of the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Janma Dasyayata Nivayadi Taratas Charte Suvigya Swarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yat Suryaha Tejavari Madam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimai. So Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. This first, if Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur lectured for 3 months on the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's how profound it is. Of course, people just ignore these things. They read the newspaper, which is nonsense. They read junk books that are recommended reading in schools. They're all nonsense. They listen to lectures by nonsense people. And therefore, what's the fruit of all that? They become nonsense, waste their life eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, like animals. Most people are living like animals today. They're not living like real human beings. A real human being will attempt to understand who they are in relationship to God or Krishna, in relationship to living entities, in relationship to the material nature. And once they understand all these things, then they become self-realized. Self-realized means to know who you really are, not, oh, I'm American, or I'm Latino, or I'm this, or I'm that. That's not who we really are. Who we really are, who is who we are eternally, and that is, as Lord Chaitanya said, that we are the eternal servant of the Lord. That's who we really are, because that's our eternal identity. Of course, people ignore all these things. Because they ignore them, they develop familial attachments, and ethnic attachments, and racial attachments, and national attachments, and universal attachments. They become attached to all these different things, and they all lead to frustration and death, and then rebirth again. Who knows what the next body will be? Because if one ignores Krishna consciousness throughout their life by sleeping, as we explained yesterday, rather than hearing, you have to wake up early in the morning to come to class to hear. But if you sleep through the early morning, you end up being an animal the rest of the day, because you haven't heard. We haven't heard Atma Tattva, the science of the soul, and the science of Krishna. So, lacking that knowledge, we live like an animal. We only eat, sleep, mate, and defend. We do not understand who we are. We don't practice devotional service. And therefore, we stay anchored very, very, very solidly in the cycle of birth and death, and we suffer unnecessarily. All kinds of bodily aches, and other people making us suffer, and nature making us suffer, and then we always ask, why is this happening? Well, it's because we're ignoring our relationship with Krishna. It's very simple. We're forgetting Krishna. Therefore, we are forced to suffer by the laws of material nature. So what is suffering? Let's ask that question. Suffering is a message to us from Krishna that we're making a mistake, or we're making many mistakes. Now, what are those mistakes? Most people can't figure it out. Therefore, when they order a hot dog or a hamburger in these different food dispensary stores, they think it's normal to eat those things. And they're violating the laws of nature by doing that. Therefore, they have to suffer. Well, wait a minute. I thought there was only one set of laws, the laws of the United States. No, there are two sets of laws. The laws of the country that you live in, and the laws of the universe that we live in. The universal laws are explained in the Ishopanishad in depth, and in the Bhagavad Gita also in depth. So if we want to know why we're suffering, it's because We are ignorant of the laws of material nature. And the laws of material nature, the synonym of that is laws of God. And a synonym of that is Dharma, or Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma are obligated occupational duties that we must do as a human being, not as an animal. Animals do not have to follow Dharma. They are following God's laws automatically by instinct. And instinct is the dictation of the Paramatma to the animal, or the insect, or the bird, or the fish, or whatever. So, by instinct, the tiger is eating meat. It doesn't drink milk. It doesn't eat ladus, right? No. If you say, here, bunny, here, take this, he won't take. But he'll bite your hand off. That he will take, not the ladu. So those are the animals are following Krishna's instructions. They are surrendered. They're acting out of instinct, and instinct is the dictation of Paramatma. Human beings have limited free will, so they're not forced to act in one way or another way. They can choose to ignore Krishna and sleep during the Brahma Muhurta, or they can say, no, I'm not going to miss the Brahma Muhurta period, because it's the time where I can make the best spiritual advancement. The rest of the day, it's very hard to make spiritual advancement. But in Brahma Muhurta, where there's no noise, no telephones ringing, there's peace. Actually, there's peace. Like right now, do you hear anything in the temple? No. All you hear is the class. So this can only happen at this time of the day. If you come at the evening Aarti, there's going to be noise. The bells are ringing for the offering. Little kids are coming in with their parents screaming. So it's hard to concentrate, right? But at this time of the day, it's very easy to concentrate the mind on what? On Atma Tattva, the science of the soul, and the science of Krishna, the Krishna Tattva. And therefore, this is the real subject. This is real knowledge that can help us at the moment of death remember Krishna and go back to Godhead. Okay, so these synonyms of Krishna are the supreme source of all energies. And also Janmadasya Yata. He is the origin of everything. Everything is coming from him, right? And also Vatanti tat tattvavitas tattvam yajganam advayam prameti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. The Lord is expanded as from him is coming the Paramatma, as well as all knowledge and the Brahman effulgence and so forth. So these are synonyms of Krishna. If you say Brahman, or if you say Paramatma, or if you say the material nature, all these things are coming from him. So they're synonymous with him, or they're synonyms of him. And the word iti used here in this verse completes the synonyms and thus indicates Bhagavan. Now, Bhagavan has a big meaning. It's a very profound meaning. It means that he is the origin of everything, he's the sustainer of everything, and everything goes back to him when the material universe is reabsorbed into his gigantic body of Mahavishnu, and therefore he's the origin of everything. And he encompasses everything, and he's present in everything as the Paramatma, every atom of the universe, in the heart of every type of living entity. Sometimes people say, oh, Prabhupada, worms don't have a heart. He said, oh, how do you know? Well, then how about a germ? The germ doesn't have a heart. But Krishna says, Iswara Parama, the verse, the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 61st verse, says that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. So based on that verse and other verses like that, like Sarva Shichaham Hridi Sanivisto, it says, I am in the heart of every living entity, and from me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. And Ishvara Parama Krishna, no, sorry, yeah. Huh? Yeah, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam. Here they say, Rajuna Tistati. Brahmayam Sarvabhutani Yantarudrani Mayaya. So that verse says, 1861, Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. And he is directing the wanderings of all living entities as if a machine that's being directed by a driver. The driver is Krishna, and the machine is the body. So, unless we understand these things, we remain in ignorance. And in that purport, it says, Arjuna was not the supreme knower, and his decision to fight or not to fight was confined to his limited discretion. Lord Krishna instructed that the individual is not all in all. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, or He Himself, Krishna, as the localized Supersoul, sits in the heart directing the living being. After changing body, so the direction is coming from Krishna, but the living entity who forgets Krishna and desires sense gratification, then Krishna helps him pursue that desire that he has. Because we cannot do anything without Krishna's help, not even commit sins. Krishna has to help us. Like, for example, if your legs don't work, how can you go to a bar and do the Bhangra in Bellevue bars? You can't. You know, you would have to, or someone would have to carry you there, right? So, in order to even sin, we need Krishna's help. You see. So, therefore, it says here that he is, as the localized supersoul, he sits in the heart directing the living being. After changing bodies, the living entity forgets his past deeds, but the supersoul, as the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all his activities. Therefore, all the activities of living entities are directed by this supersoul. The living entity gets what he deserves and is carried by the material body, which is created in the material energy under the direction of the supersoul. So, when it says he gets what he deserves, that means based on our desires and our activity, and based on our desires, Krishna will help us achieve those desires, even if there are sinful desires. And therefore, we become responsible for the reactions. So people who engage in nonsense activities, they've been helped by Krishna because they desire it, and then they have to pay the price, which is the reactions. So this is the law of nature, and it is very, very, very implacable, or in other words, you cannot stop it. As long as we desire the wrong things, we get the opportunity to do those wrong things, and then we get the reactions to them. Therefore, it makes sense to desire the right things. So everything's going to be determined by our desires. So if we desire to serve Krishna, then Krishna makes it easy for us. And if we desire to not serve Krishna, Krishna will give that facility. And then to teach us that we made a mistake, there is suffering. There's pains in the body. There's pains caused by others. There are pains caused by nature. So, therefore, we have to understand suffering is a message from Krishna. It's a message from Krishna that we're doing something wrong. But most people don't know this. No one is explaining it to them. The Christians explain it a little bit, maybe. The Muslims explain it a little bit. But it's not really clear. But in Bhagavad Gita, it's very clear. So therefore it says that, but the supersoul, as the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all the activities of living entities. Therefore, all the activities of living entities are directed by this supersoul. The living entity gets what he deserves and is carried by the material body, which is created in the material energy under the direction of the supersoul. As soon as the living entity is placed in a particular type of body, he has to work under the spell of that body, of that bodily situation. In other words, if someone gets a dog's body, they have to act like a dog. If someone gets a hog's body or a pig's body, they have to act like a pig. They can't help it. Right? A person seated in a high-speed motor car goes faster than one seated in a slower car, though the living entities, the drivers, may be the same. So if you're a driver, but you have an old beat-up jalopy or an old beat-up car, you can't go as fast as a brand-new super Corvette or a brand-new super car. But you are a driver and somebody else is a driver. You're both drivers, but yet one goes slow and one goes fast. It all depends on the body you have, the body of the car or the body of the supercar. So in the same way, if you get a dog's body, you don't have the same facilities as a human being. Similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity so that he or she may work according to his or her past desires. Everything depends on the desires. Everything depends on, and where do the desires come from? Publicity, PR, and dogma. That's where the desires are coming from. But the desires should come from Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. That's why it's so essential, like as we heard yesterday, how essential it is to hear this Bhagavatam, and especially at this time of day when there's no interference going on. During the day, there's plenty of interference. The children are crying, and you have to pay bills, and you have to go take someone to the Bharatanatyam practice, and you have to go to the hospital because someone's got some sickness, and you have to do this. You have to do so many things during the day. But at this time of day, it's relatively very peaceful. Therefore, you can absorb spiritual knowledge best in the Brahma Muhurta, and to chant your rounds also. So, it says, similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity so that he may work according to his past desires. The living entity is not independent. Now, who is going to accept that? Everyone's running around saying, I'm independent. You know, nobody tells me what to do. So one time this very rough and gruff man came to our free restaurant, My Sweet Lord restaurant. This is many years ago. And he was causing a disturbance. So I had to tell him, look, from now on, whenever you come, you're not allowed to come inside the restaurant. But you can stand outside, and we'll give you a plate, and you walk away with it. So what do you mean? Why can't I come in this restaurant? I said, because you're misbehaving. He said, well, I don't follow rules. You don't follow rules. I said, where do you live? He said, why do you want to know where I live? Well, because you know where I live. So I should know where you live. Well, I got a VW Volkswagen. I said, where is it? I'm not going to tell you. I said, I want to know where it is. You know where I am? Well, it's over here, this other place. I said, I'm going to come there. I said, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to come and I'm going to pee on your VW. No, you're not. I said, that's a rule. See, you say you don't follow rules, but you make your own rules. See? So I said, you're a hypocrite. You say you don't follow any rules, but you do follow the rules that you make. See. So our rule, so I can follow rules that I make. You're not allowed to come in here anymore. And you stay outside. But if you cause trouble outside, we're not going to give you any food also. So that was the end of that discussion with him. So similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity so that he may work according to his past desires. The living entity is not independent. One should not think himself independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The individual is always under the Lord's control. Therefore, one's duty is to surrender And that is the injunction of the next verse. Tam eva saranam gacha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param santim stanam prapsyasi sasvatam. O Arjuna, surrender unto him, meaning Krishna, utterly. By his grace, you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. Okay, so everyone actually wants to go to the supreme eternal abode with the spiritual body and have transcendental pastimes. Chanting, dancing, feasting, festivals. That's what's going on in the spiritual world all the time. Wonderful activities, uplifting and pure, with no selfishness involved and no criminal activities and no nonsense people. Everyone's serious about loving Krishna. But we're not serious now. So therefore, we have a chance to be serious by hearing what is our real potential in life. Our real potential is to be eternal, because our soul is eternal. But as long as we have these low-grade nonsense desires, we're forced into different bodies and forced to act not as an eternal soul, but as a temporary being, and always in trouble, always harassed by difficulties and pains and suffering and miseries and sometimes some happiness, but happiness is simply the absence of suffering. It's not real happiness. So, therefore it says, now coming back to the purport, the original source of all energies, or the summum bonum, this is a Latin term, we've encountered it many times. It means the greatest good, the summum bonum, the greatest good, the greatest truth, is the absolute truth, which is called Param Brahma, etc. And Bhagavan is the last word of the absolute truth. So Bhagavan means the source of everything, the maintainer of everything, and the absorber of everything. He is the absolute truth. There's no greater truth than Krishna. But even with the synonyms for Bhagavan, such as Narayana, Vishnu, and Purusha, the last word is Krishna, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pavartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. This is the 10th chapter, 8th verse. This is one of the most important verses in the entire Bhagavad Gita, because it clearly states that anyone who knows Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead will surrender to him and engage in his devotional service continually. Right? Besides that verse that we just quoted, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, the Srimad Bhagavatam itself is the representation of Lord Krishna as the sound incarnation of the Lord. So in Kali Yuga, the incarnation of the Lord is Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, if we bring Srimad Bhagavatam to your house and install it, it's equal to the deity in the temple, because it is Krishna himself in the sound vibration. The whole Bhagavatam is about Krishna. The Vedas have many subjects, but the Bhagavatam has one subject, Krishna. But Krishna includes everything. So if you know Krishna, you have all knowledge. And it says, the Srimad Bhagavatam is a representation of Lord Krishna as a sound incarnation of the Lord. And then it quotes 1st Canto, 3rd chapter, 43rd verse, which says, Krishna swa dharmapagate dharma jnanadi bihi saha kalo nasta drisam esha puranarko dunoditaha. Thus, by general, so that verse is very important. Let's look at that verse, because there are two very important verses in the 1st Canto, 3rd chapter. One is this verse, it's the 43rd verse, and it says, this Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana, from Srimad Bhagavatam. And so that's why this verse is so important, and it's being quoted in this purport. And the other verse that's extremely important is Ite cham sakala Krishna, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Indriyari Vilkalam Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. That's 1st Canto, 3rd chapter, 28th verse. So you have these two verses, 1:328 and 1:343. So this verse, 1:328 says, all of the above mentioned incarnations, so he goes through 24 incarnations in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, 24 incarnations of Krishna. And now it says, all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. So, now, today we have heard two of the most important verses, one in Bhagavad Gita and now one in Srimad Bhagavatam, that establishes the Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. So, therefore, ete cham sakala pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, and so forth. And aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate. So 10th chapter, 8th verse, and Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 3rd chapter, 28th verse, are the two most important verses to establish the understanding that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Now, there are other verses also, but these two are the most important. And most people will not argue with you. Most people who know Vedic knowledge, even the Mayavadis, they won't argue so much if you quote these two verses, because they know they are bona fide verses that establish Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. Now, in this purport, where it says, all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. In the purport it says, in this particular stanza or verse, Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is distinguished from other incarnations. He is counted amongst the avatars or incarnations because out of his causeless mercy, the Lord descends from his transcendental abode. Avatara means one who descends. All the incarnations of the Lord, including the Lord himself, descend on the different planets of the material world, as also in different species of life, to fulfill particular missions. Sometimes he comes himself, and sometimes his different plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions. So plenary means complete. So Balaram is a complete plenary portion of Krishna. The only difference between Krishna and Balaram is that Balaram is light complexioned and Krishna is dark complexioned. That's the only difference. And Narayana is a plenary expansion of Lord. Plenary in the sense that Narayana has the same powers as Krishna, but not the same bodily features. He's got 4 arms, Krishna has 2 arms. And Narayana does not have all the qualities that Krishna has. He doesn't play the flute, he doesn't dance in the Rasa Leela dance, and so forth. Balaram does. He has his own gopis and he has his own Rasa Leela dance, right? That are different than Krishna's gopis and Krishna's Rasa Leela dance. But because he's non-different than Krishna, Narayana is non-different essentially from Krishna, but there are some minor differences of sweetness. So when Krishna plays his flute, it is totally enchanting. And when Krishna dances with the gopis in Rasa Leela dance, again, it's totally enchanting. Everyone is attached to it or attracted to it. Even Lakshmi Devi, she wanted to join the Rasa Leela dance, but she didn't want to change her body, so she was not allowed to enter. You have to be a gopi to enter into the Rasa Leela dance. That's another story. So then it says, originally the Lord is full of all opulences, all prowess or power, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. When they are partly manifested through the plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions, these same 6 opulences of the Lord, who has them in full, it should be noted that certain manifestations of his different powers are required for those particular functions. When in the room small electric bulbs are displayed, it does not mean that the electric powerhouse is limited by the small bulbs. The same powerhouse can supply power to operate large-scale industrial dynamos with greater volts. Similarly, the incarnations of the Lord display limited powers because so much power is needed at that particular time. So in other words, there's a saying, bring a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. Well, you don't need a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito, right? So therefore, Krishna doesn't invest all his powers in every one of his partial plenary or partial plenary expansions. Just like Vyasadeva, he does not create the world, but he writes the Vedas. So he is a literary incarnation of Krishna. He's given that literary power. But he's a jiva like you and me. But he's given this power by Krishna. So he's considered, because he has that power, he's considered an incarnation of the Lord, because he can do something extraordinary that nobody else can do. So, therefore, to understand, this is called the science of Krishna, understanding Krishna and all his expansions. Well, you and I are an expansion of Krishna. The material world is an expansion of Krishna. So therefore, Krishna is everything, but everything is not Krishna. So therefore, the dog, yes, the dog is also an expansion of Krishna, but I can't put the dog on the altar and worship it as Krishna, you see. So you have to learn all these things, because the Mayavadis mix it all up. And because they don't want to explain everything, they just say, well, this is all Maya, it's all illusion. There's only one reality, that's the Brahman effulgence. But Brahman is only one aspect of Krishna. So therefore, the Mayavadis are the number one cancel culture people in this world. They cancel the whole material world. They say it's an illusion. They cancel Krishna and the entire spiritual world except for the Brahmajyoti. So they cancel just about everything except the Brahmajyoti. Therefore, their understanding of truth is very, very limited because of all the things they canceled. And therefore, they have very piecemeal knowledge, not real knowledge. Okay, so then it says, for example, Lord Parashuram and Lord Nrsimha displayed unusual opulence by killing the disobedient Kshatriyas 21 times and killing the great powerful atheist Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu was so powerful that even the demigods and other planets would tremble simply by the unfavorable raising of his eyebrow. Whoa! Just by moving his eyebrow a little bit, the demigods would be frightened out of their wits. The demigods in the higher level of material existence many, many times excel the most well-to-do human beings in duration of life, beauty, wealth, paraphernalia, and in all their respects. Still, they were afraid of Hiranyakashipu. Thus, we can simply imagine how powerful Hiranyakashipu was in this material world. But even Hiranyakashipu was cut into small pieces by the nails of Lord Nrsimha. This means that anyone materially powerful cannot stand the strength of the Lord's nails. Similarly, Janmadagnya displayed, that means Parashuram, displayed the Lord's power to kill all the disobedient kings powerfully situated in their respective states. The Lord's empowered incarnation, Narada, and plenary incarnation Varaha, as well as indirectly empowered Lord Buddha, created faith in the mass of people. The incarnations of Rama and Dhanvantari displayed his fame, and Balaram, Mohini, and Vamana exhibited his beauty. Dattatreya, Matsya, and Kumara and Kapila exhibited his transcendental knowledge. Nara and Narayana Rishis exhibited his renunciation. So all the different incarnations of the Lord indirectly or directly manifested different features, but Lord Krishna, the primeval Lord, exhibited the complete features of Godhead, and thus it is confirmed that he is the source of all other incarnations. So this is amazing statements by Prabhupada to summarize why Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the most extraordinary feature exhibited by Lord Sri Krishna was his internal energetic manifestations of his pastimes with the cowherd girls, the gopis. His pastimes with the gopis are all displays of transcendental existence, bliss, and knowledge, although these are manifested apparently as sex love. Well, there is no need for sex in the spiritual world because everyone's eternal, right? So Krishna's intimate pastimes with the gopis is not mundane sex. That's why people who are attached to mundane sex should not hear about Krishna's intimate pastimes with the gopis, because immediately they'll project their own corrupt way of living onto that and misunderstand totally what the Rasa Lila dance is about. See? So, and the warning is there that we should not openly talk about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis in public. We should talk about Bhagavad Gita and the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. But the 10th canto is confidential knowledge of Krishna's pastimes with not only the gopis, but the gopas and the residents of Goloka. So that is reserved for genuine devotees. Because if we hear these things and project on them our corrupt thoughts and imagery that we've evolved by seeing nonsense movies and other things, then we commit an offense to Krishna. It's very detrimental for us. However, when the spiritual master is convinced that the devotee is capable to understand these things, then it'll be revealed to them. But until that time, we should focus on Bhagavad Gita and the first 9 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam to purify all the nonsense things that have entered into our mind, all the nonsense imagery. Just like the other day when I was doing a house program, one lady asked a question. She said, Prabhu, when I chant, my mind starts wandering here and there, and so many things come into my mind. She said, what can I do to get all these things out of my mind? I said, well, it's very simple. First of all, how did they get into your mind? You have to ask that question. Well, it's watching movies, especially Bollywood movies. Bollywood and Hollywood, they're equal now. They're synonyms now. Before, Bollywood was not a synonym of Hollywood because it had good movies, you know, how much a son loves the mother, or how much the mother sacrifices for her daughter or son. They were nice, and they were shown all over the third world, in the Soviet Union and in the Muslim countries. They would show Bollywood movies because the themes were good. But then Bollywood started becoming Hollywood. And now the themes are not different anymore between Hollywood and Bollywood. And watching those movies, one's mind becomes corrupted. And watching all kinds of, and hearing the news will corrupt the mind, because the news has to be spectacular. So it talks about, you know, murders and this thing and that thing. And all that enters into the mind. Now the question is how to get it out of the mind. Well, whenever the mind starts to wander, one should increase the volume of the chanting. Instead of going, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Once you go, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You'll see those thoughts go away. You know, you increase the speed and the volume, immediately those thoughts will go away. Right. Another way of getting rid of those thoughts is look at the picture of Krishna or Prabhupada when you're chanting and increase the loudness of the chanting. Those thoughts will go away. So this is the benediction of the holy name. It can help us purify the mind. Just like if we have an unclean body, we go to the Safeway and we buy some soap. And then we come back and take a shower with water and then rub the soap on our body, and it emulsifies the dirt and the oil, and it's washed away with the water, and we get a clean body. So, does Safeway sell soap for the dirty mind? No. What is the soap for the dirty mind? It's chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Because you're associating with Krishna by chanting his holy names. And therefore, eventually the mind will become purified. So, therefore, who we are is determined by what we let into the 9 orifices. Orifice means holes of the body. There are 9 holes of the body. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, a mouth, an anus, and a genital. So what we let in those 9 holes will determine who we are. And if we let in nonsense things into those 9 holes, we become a giant nonsense. And the rest of our life we'll waste doing nonsensical things, avoiding Krishna consciousness, like the plague. So if someone, one time, this one friend of mine came from France to visit me in Berkeley, California. And his parents told him, don't go. Why? Because, you know, Berkeley is in the San Francisco area, and you know, everyone, it was newspaper articles all over the world that, you know, AIDS was, you know, rampant in the San Francisco area because of because of the type of people that are living there. So they tried to convince the boy not to come, but he said, no, I'm going to go. I want to see my friend. So he comes all the way, and when he got to San Francisco, you know, I picked him up at the airport. I said, are you happy to be here? He said, well, I want to be with you. I'm not happy to be here. I said, why not? I said, well, because, you know, my parents think I'm going to get AIDS by coming here. Well, I said, well, there's one sure way to get AIDS, I said, and I don't think you're going to do that, so don't worry. You know, so we see how, you know, people are afraid of the environment of some places because the environment is full of nonsense, like San Francisco. Actually, it's called San Francisco because people are sick mentally and physically there. Okay, so therefore, the Bhagavatam is the sound vibration of Krishna. And when you have it in your house and actually read it out loud, you're associating with Krishna. Okay, what time is it now? Okay, are there any questions? We'll stop right there. Any questions? No questions? Nobody? Out of all these people, not one question? Okay, go ahead. Come up here and ask the question.
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Basically, in this verse, Maharaj, Prabhupada has stressed on this, or explained this in the translation or maybe in purport as all Parabrahma and Paramatma and Bhagwan.
There's
as
synonyms of Krishna. Synonyms meaning they mean the same thing.
yeah, the same thing, but still we distinct them, right? I mean, so how do we understand that? Because synonyms generally has a equal. When we say synonyms,
Well,
means
it's like
our
this.
understanding is equal.
It's like this. Let's say you're going to buy a house, but in Seattle, but you had an emergency in India. You had to go to India, but the house is going to close while you're in India. So what do? You give power of authority to a person. Like, let's say you give it to Sukirti Prabhu. You say, Prabhu, I'm going to give you power of attorney. You can sign for me, right? So that means that he's not you, but he has the power that you have given him, right?
Okay.
Okay, so Krishna, whoever he gives power to, is an incarnation, but there's different levels of incarnation. There's plenary incarnation, like Balaram. There's partial plenary incarnation, like Narayana, or there's partial incarnation, like Parasuram.
Yeah.
Okay? So what is your question?
No. I was just trying to understand that, like, even if there is still some level kind of thing, right? So if we have to differentiate these three in terms of the power or in terms of the potential, whatever it is, but we at the same time, Prabhupada is calling it like or as a synonym. So I was little confused. So how it's a contradictory.
There synonym means other names that mean the same thing as the original name, Krishna. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Haribol. So therefore, you'll see in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, sometimes it says Narayana, sometimes it says Purusha, sometimes it says Balaram, right? So although these are expansions of Krishna, they are non-different than him. Therefore, you can use these synonyms to refer to him. Right? Any other questions? Yeah.
So you said that the animal instincts are basically instructions of Krishna.
Yes.
So
Of the super soul, yeah.
of the super soul, because they are completely surrendered. So
They have no choice. Speak into the microphone.
yeah, because so they are okay. So animal instincts are considered as instructions of Krishna because they have no choice. But what about the human instinct? Because humans also have an instinct. So are you saying when they are completely surrendered, then all their instincts will be Krishna's instruction?
Well, see, the human being has limited freedom, limited free will. So you can hear that internal voice saying, don't do this. But still you do it, right? There are many situations like that where you know something is wrong, but you still do it. But if you come to class regularly, because there's 3 steps before you act. So now this is psychology. There's thinking, feeling, and willing. So if you see something like a nice car, and you'd say, wow, that's a brand new Tesla, with the doors that look like wings and everything, it's really nice, I'm driving this old car. It'd be nice if I had that new car, Then you're thinking, now you're feeling it. It would be so much nicer to sit in that car with that, and the gas is less expensive. There's no gas; it's just electricity, and this thing. You start feeling how great it would be, right? And then you come to the point where you say, "If I don't have that car, I'll never be happy." So what's the next thing? Immediately, you'll go and try and buy it. Right? You will.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. So Krishna consciousness can act on the level of thinking and stop you from going to feeling and willing. If you've been coming to class regularly and hearing and discussing and chanting, then Because the desires are going to enter in the mind, because you're in the material world, you see things, right? So there's no doubt about it, that all different desires enter into the mind every day. It's like a river of desires coming in, right, into the ocean of your mind. But through Krishna consciousness, you can stop it on the level of thinking.
One more question.
Yes.
Maharaj, you said that the suffering is also a signal from Krishna that we are doing some mistakes.
Yes.
But even big devotees also, they suffer bodily pain and all. So is that a signal from
Okay,
Krishna?
so, like for example, Prabhupada made 4,700 disciples, right? So what percentage is that, 4,700 to the number of people in the world?
Yeah, it's like 0.001% or something.
It's very, very
Very small.
insignificant, right? So those 4,700, or that very insignificant number, when they suffer, most of them, it is also a message from Krishna. But when a pure devotee suffers, it's because of the offenses of his disciples. So now we had 4,700. Now out of the 4,700, you limit it to what?
Very small number.
Very, very small number. When the pure devotee suffers, it's because of the offenses of the disciple. Therefore, the disciple promises, no meat eating, no gambling, no this, no that, right? So if they do those things, it causes suffering to the guru. It's not that the guru is engaged in sinful activity. Well, they can be, but then the source of that suffering is a message, right? But when the disciples break the rules, it causes suffering to the guru. Haribol. Okay, well, I think, any other questions? Yes, go ahead. Well, if you ask it from there, no one can hear it from the online people.
Maharaj, you mentioned, Hare Krishna Maharaj,
Yeah, Haribol.
you mentioned about Brahmajyoti.
Yes.
What is the significance of Brahmajyoti, and why do Mayavadis only talk about the significance of Brahmajyoti out of all the plenary expansions of Krishna?
Well, because they have canceled everything, right? Like, for example, let's say you have a friend, but that friend does something bad to you. So you cancel your friendship. For you, that person doesn't exist anymore. So the Mayavadis have canceled the existence of Krishna and the spiritual world and the material world. So what are they left with? They're just left with the Brahmajyoti. And the Brahmajyoti is eternal existence, eternality. But their position in Brahmajyoti is temporary. Why? Because in the Brahmajyoti there are also Vaikuntha planets, but they refuse knowledge of the Vaikuntha planets. So it's as if you're in a rocket ship and you're going to Mars, but they miscalculate and your rocket ship misses Mars. That means that now you're in space, and eventually your rocket is going to fail. There's just limited energy. It's going to fail, and you're going to go nowhere. You fall down. So that's what happens to the Mayavadis, because they're not taking any refuge, or ashraya, as they say in Sanskrit, in any Vaikuntha planet. Eventually they will fall down, because all you need is one little desire, you fall down. So it's very boring, isn't it? Let's say you're in the middle of the ocean, right? And it's every day you don't see land. So after a little while, it gets boring and it's tortuous. You say, well, I wish we could land somewhere, but you don't see any land. So eventually you become very, very frustrated. So that's what happens to the Mayavadis, because they have no knowledge. They reject knowledge of Krishna. They reject knowledge of Vaikuntha, and they just talk about Brahman, or the Brahmajyoti, So eventually they will fall down. It was very boring. And also, any little desire that enters the mind, immediately they fall down. Any material desire. So, ultimately, they're envious of Krishna. So therefore, the worst aparadis, or the worst insulters of Krishna, are the Mayavadis. Because they say, well, he doesn't have a body, therefore he can't see, he can't speak, he can't walk, he can't do anything, right? He can't accept your offerings because he's not a person. So they're insulting Krishna. How would you like it if someone said, oh, well, she doesn't have any eyes, and she doesn't have any ears, and she doesn't have a nose, and she doesn't have a tongue, and she doesn't have any legs, it doesn't have a head. Well, what are you then? You're nothing, right? So that's enviousness when they speak like that. And they will speak like that. Okay? Well,
Thank you, Maharaj.
yes. Okay, we'll stop right there. Hare Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Who wants to chant for Srila Prabhupada? Anybody? Okay, please. Oh, we forgot the homework. So Samarth did homework. Arush did homework. Anybody else? Okay, so tomorrow morning we'll start with homework tomorrow morning. Good.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Vandamui Savadana Mate Vandamui Savadana Mate Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhava Toriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Palma Vakya जय प्रसाद पूरे सर्वा आशा
हे प्रसाद पूरे सर्वा
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
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 दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जते
प्रेम भक्ति चाहते अविद्या विनाश जते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जते
प्रेम भक्ति चाहते अविद्या विनाश जते
वेद गाय जहाँ चरित
वेद गाय जनर चरित
वेद गाय जहाँ चरित
वेद गाय जनर चरित
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु
गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु
गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु
लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना आहा प्रभु करो दया दे हमारे पद छाया
प्रभु को जया देव मुने जया
आहा प्रभु करो दया दे हमारे पद छाया
प्रभु को जया दे हमारे पद जया
एबे जास कुशुक्ति भुवाना
भुवाना
प्रभु पाद पतित पवना
प्रभुपाद पतित पवना
जय प्रभु पद जय प्रभु पद जय प्रभु पद जय प्रभु पद
प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivajikacha Astatara Satara Shri Shishimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutali Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanam. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Parincharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatira Satani. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of all. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhute. Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda. Namaste. Sesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Hare